Chapter 1, Josie. Allenville, Missouri, 1935. How had she fallen? Josie struggled to her feet and used a glove-covered hand to wipe snow from her bottom. She walked the path leading from her cabin to the barn at least twice a day. This should never have happened. It was the advertisement. That's what it was. She had slipped and fallen on her butt because her mind had been on that dreaded advertisement. Widow offering respectable marriage. Respectable marriage, respectable marriage. The words echoed in her head, seeming to mock her. Two crows perched on the barn roof screeched out their raucous call. "Shut up, you loudmouth bird," she yelled. Encouraged, they called again. Josie placed one hand on her hip and used the other to point an accusing finger at her two antagonists. "Hell's bells! I know I'm the town whore's daughter," she shouted at the irritating fowls. "I know no decent man will offer me respectful marriage." Deflated, she turned from the crows and looked around at the snow-covered landscape. The frown on her face softened as she looked at her snug cabin with its large front porch and picket fence. In back of the cabin, proudly covered in white-painted daisies, was the privy she had built with her own hands. Josie continued her trudge down the path to the red-painted barn, covered in the same white flowers. She thought about Bessie the cow, and her sheep boy Blue and Bo Peep, who were waiting for her. They were her friends. They loved her. It wasn't enough, damn it. It wasn't enough. "Mama, I love you, I forgive you, but sweet Jesus, you let me in a mess." Could the answer be in the kindling box where she had threw the wadded advertisement? She frowned, so scary. There had to be another way. Allenville, Missouri, 1914. Tears mingled with sweat ran down her face. Mulberry juice and pulp ran through the sieve's holes into the battered dishpan. Molly dropped the stir stick and wiped her face with the tail of her dress. She stared at the residue of seeds and bugs left in the colander. Sticky red goo. Was this the rest of her life? The color of sin mixed with the remains of insects? The dishpan beneath the colander was full of thick, red mulberry mash. She picked up the colander and heard Josie cry. Replacing it, she walked to the one-year-old child sitting on a blanket in the shade of a large oak tree. "How's my sweetheart?" Molly crooned to her daughter. The chubby-cheeked toddler smiled up at her, holding out her arms. Unshed tears magnified her green eyes. Molly wiped her face and blew her nose before bending to pick up the little girl. She held Josie close. "You look just like your papa. You have his color eyes, you know." Molly choked back a sob. "I miss him so much." The young woman swayed back and forth, cuddling her daughter, then sank down on the blanket with Josie in her arms. The infant was content to lay on Molly's breast and listen to her soft voice. "Oh, Josie, darling, I hope I am doing the right thing. I know I'll never see your papa again." Sean had to leave. He had no choice. Now I ain't got no choice. Molly smoothed back black curls from Josie's forehead and sang the song her mama had sung to her. "Tooraloo-ra-loo-ra, tooraloo-ra-lie, tooraloo-ra-loo-ra, that's an Irish lullaby." Kissing her daughter's forehead, Molly laid the sleeping child on the blanket, then turned resolutely to the kettle of boiling water. Using a large hot pad, she lifted it from the tripod and carried it to the dishpan of mulberry mash. Steam rose into the already warm air as the hot water diluted the pulp. Reverently, Molly picked up the dress she had worn at her wedding. Was it her imagination, or was it glowing? She clasped the dress to her breast and squeezed her eyes shut. She was back in the small chapel, standing beside Sean. They were bathed in a warm glow of love, and she was promising to love and honor him for the rest of their lives. Overhead, the screech of a blackbird tore her from the beautiful vision. When she opened her eyes and looked at the dress, it was just a dress. She wadded it up and dropped it into the pot of homemade dye. Using the stir stick, she ruthlessly poked the last of the material in the mixture and watched it absorb color. Red, sinful red, the color of wickedness slowly took over. Sean, I love you. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. The dress would never be the same. She would never be the same. When it was dry, Molly took the scarlet dress into her cabin and smoothed the wrinkles with irons hot from the cook stove. When the dress was ready, she held her breath as she buttoned the bodice that tightly spanned her breast. There was no helping the change having a baby had made to her body. Using the tiny, compact mirror her mother had given her, Molly painted her lips and cheeks with the remaining pulp from the colander. "Sweet Josie," she murmured to her daughter, sitting on the floor, wearing most of the soggy cookie in her hand. "I'm going to leave you with my friend Missouri for just a little bit. She will take good care of you. Mama's going out to get started on making us a living. We will never be hungry or beholden to no one, Josie girl." An hour later, Molly opened the door to the all-male inner sanctum of the Allenville pool hall. It was Saturday night, and the large room was full of tired men who were letting loose after a long work week. It was their evening to relax before Sunday morning services at the local church. The rancid odor of tobacco, beer, and overheated men hit her like a fist. Molly's head reeled and her stomach heaved. Unseen, she backed out and shut the door. Outside, she bent over, held her belly, and gulped fresh air, remembering her husband's parting words. "Goodbye, my darling, my sweet wife. I love you. Mr. Stufflebean will see to your needs until I can send you some money. Mr. Stufflebean will see to your needs." "No, no," her mind shouted. "Mr. Stufflebean is dead, shot by hunters." She couldn't stop the words. They echoed over and over. "Sean, Sean, what am I going to do?" she asked the night air. But it was her father's voice that answered. "You will do what you were always meant to do. You'll go a-whoring. You ain't no daughter of mine. You were born a whore, and by God, you'll die a whore." Molly put her hand over her ears. "Shut up, you mean old man. I'm glad you won't claim me as a daughter no more. I don't want to be kin of yours." In the light of the stars, she looked down at her sinful red dress. If she was born a whore, she would be the best damn whore there ever was. She squared her shoulders, lifted her chin, and repeated the words while giving a nod of her head. "You were born a whore, and you'll always be a whore." She ran her hands over her breast and down over her hips, then with firm resolve jerked open the pool room door. Wisps of tobacco smoke eddied in the light of a large kerosene lamp hanging from the ceiling. The lamp flooded the pool table with light. Men dressed in striped overalls sat at the bar, quietly enjoying draughts of beer. Others sat at tables playing cards or dominoes. Molly, with head held high, walked toward the pool table where the light would best illuminate her. Conversation ceased as one by one the men saw her and paused drinking and card playing. Glasses clinked as they were placed on tables, and chairs scraped the floor as they were moved to gain their occupants a better view. The bartender spotted the young woman. His eyes widened as he watched Molly approach with slow, swaying steps. He frowned, as if jealous, when she smiled and leaned down to whisper in a young man's ear. Red-faced, beaming, the overall-clad man handed her his glass of beer. Molly took the glass from his work-hardened hands, leaned back, and gulped her first taste of wicked amber liquid. Her stomach roiled, and her mind screamed horse piss. But she swallowed and took another drink before handing the glass back to the red-faced young man. Fortified, she resumed her hip-swaying walk toward the pool table. She measured the table with her eyes, then turned back to the young man who had shared his beer. "Would you help me, please?" she asked him with a smile and a wink. The young man grinned broadly and walked toward her. Molly turned her back to the table. "I would like to sit here, please." Without hesitation, he placed his hands on her small waist and lifted Molly high enough to plant her bottom on the green felt. "Now, go sit down," she said to her benefactor. Surprised at her own boldness, Molly watched her new acquaintance obey her command. For the first time in her life, she was in control. Turning, she found a reflection in a large mirror behind the bar. She stared back at dark brown eyes fringed with black lashes. The mulberry stain on her cheeks and lips looked plumb sinful, but added just the right amount of color to her pale face. Holy Hannah! She looked like the pictures in the book of naughty ladies passed around at school. Molly pursed her painted lips. Mama said they were pouty lips. She ran her tongue around them and heard an audible sigh come from her audience. Reaching up, she patted her auburn curls in place, noting the red highlights gleaming in the light. She adjusted the red ribbon that held the shiny mask from her face and noticed how the movement made her breast strain against the dress bodice that motherhood had made too small. Heart beating wildly, she looked around at the sea of faces. All were trained on her. In her head, her father's voice rang out, "Get out of my house! You're carrying a bastard in your belly. You were born a whore. You'll always be a whore." Molly watched the men as with trembling hands she slowly released the buttons at the neck of her dress. 1, 2, 3 buttons. Pale silken globes peeked from their confinement, revealing an enticing cleavage. Molly fought the urge to cover herself as her breast sought freedom. Something was happening in the room. You could feel it. The air smelled of it, crackled with it. It bounced off the walls. It filled every square inch. Molly looked into the eyes of the men. Eyes of lust. Isn't that what she was here for? Fear overwhelmed her. Her heart fluttered. These men, all of these men, faces looking up at her. Young faces, old faces, faces with facial hair, faces shaven clean, different faces. Eyes the same, full of lust. She knew lust. It had been in her father's eyes when he pinched her sensitive young breast and made her raise her dress and pull down her panties before he used his belt to beat her bare bottom. "You're a whore, Molly. he had shouted with every blow of his belt. Molly dropped her head into her hands. Sweat popped out on her forehead and pooled between her breasts. She would be inviting them into her home, into her body. Making love with Sean had been beautiful, but all of these men, Sean, forgive me. Her husband was never coming back. She could never marry again. If she didn't have a man, she would dry up like a prune, a crusty old prune. How would she feed her baby? Questions. She dropped her head into her hands. Molly sat still, but time didn't. The musty scent of lust gave way to the odor of alcohol, tobacco, and sweat. Disappointed men turned once more to their liquid refreshments, mumbling words of disgust about women. An older man with a straying beard roared his disapproval. "This here establishment is for men only. Get your sorry ass out of here." Some of the men nodded their assent. Others frowned their disappointment. The sound of cards shuffling, glasses hitting wooden tables, and rumbling male voices resumed. She didn't see the bartender approach, but there he was, holding out a small glass. Molly looked into his eyes and took his offering. Putting it to her lips, she swallowed the fiery liquid. She felt warmth spread through her belly. Molly blinked and looked at the empty glass. Courage. Liquid courage spread with the warmth. "Gentlemen," she said timidly. The men looked up. One shouted, "Spit it out, lady." "Gentlemen," she started again, "my name is Molly, and tomorrow night I will be open for business. I aim to be the best whore in the county." She held her head high and her voice grew stronger. "You will find me in my cabin, a mile east of town. I'll be charging 50 cents. Eyes widened, brows went up, and glasses raised. Molly jumped from the table, ignoring comments and dodging reaching hands. As calmly as possible, she walked toward the exit. At the open door, she turned and said, "Take a bath before you come and scrape the cow shit off your boots." She slammed the door, hiked up her skirts, and ran as if the devil was chasing her. Winded, she slowed her pace and looked around her. Quiet. She was alone. Molly stood still, bending at the waist. She gulped night air. Her panting calmed. It was over. She had done it. But at what cost? Josie. She sank to her knees, her precious baby. "What have I done to you, Josie?" she whispered to the night air. The yipping of the coyote broke the silence. Molly jumped, filled both hands full of skirt, and ran.